Vincent.
Stop! Welcome to the podcast. I'm Corey.
I'm Jen.
I'm Natalie.
And we are the Art History Babes. We're coming at you tonight on YouTube.
We're on YouTube. So if you want to see our faces while we talk and watch us in our hijinks and our shenanigans,
Oh, man.
you can watch this whole podcast on YouTube. Make sure to check it out.
Please do.
But actually, this episode is a very special episode for about a lot of reasons. First off, it's about Van Gogh. And if you've listened to our podcast for a while now, we have had some feelings about Van Gogh over the years.
There's a line all the way down the block in the middle of a blizzard. People outside, waiting in line outside of the museum, all the way down the block.
And people get hyped over Van Gogh.
And I just, we got our coffee, and I was like, we're not going to stand in that line. We're going to come back tomorrow. And I, started to cry. Because I was just because...
You were thinking about our pal Van Gogh.
Exactly. He was so sad, and he was so depressed his whole life, and he didn't, sell, anything, and
he was hungry, dude.
Yeah, he was, and he just had, such a sad life, and for him to, I just wish he could have seen these people, lining up in a blizzard to go see his paintings. It was just really emotional.
Van Gogh.
Taking it all the way back to one of our earliest episodes, the color theory episodes, where we...
It's a really intense episode.
Yeah, we straight up get weepy about Van Gogh.
It had nothing to do with the sheer quantity of wine that we had consumed that evening. Well, if you haven't checked that episode out, you should, because it's just a load of fun.
It is a load of fun. Actually, I think we're going to be revamping and re-releasing that one soon.
Nice.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So we love Van Gogh. We have had many things to say about him throughout the course of this podcast, and we're really excited to be able to do this full-length episode and just dive into all these different interesting aspects of him as a human and an artist. And we're also trying something kind of new with this episode. So we're creating a immersive art history experience is the goal anyways. That's what we're aiming for. So on top of this podcast, all about Van Gogh, we're also going to be releasing for the month of September limited edition Van Gogh merch. Mm-hmm. Limited for the month of September Van Gogh merch in our store at arthistorybabes.com. And then also, fun thing, we're going to give you guys a little art project that you can partake in if you so choose. We're gonna give you the details on the art project at the end of the episode, so stick around for exactly what the art project is. And then also for our patrons, we're gonna create kind of a forum type space where we will post an academic article related to this episode that you can read if you like, and you can kind of join in on the conversation about all things Van Gogh in the Patreon space. So it's kind of a little VIP chat type situation. If you aren't a patron and you'd like to be one, you can head over to patreon.com/arthistorybabes and become one for as low as $1 a month.
Just $1.
Just $1.
And for those of you out there who are already supporting us through Patreon, thank you so much. That's just so cool of you.
Actually, I did want to also take a quick second to kind of just get heart to heart with y'all. First of all, our patrons are we're so grateful for the patron support that we have. You guys are really helping us out a lot, and we really appreciate every single one of you. Also, just to kind of get real with our listeners, if you listen to us often and you really enjoy this content and you enjoy it regularly and you want it to be made more often, or you want it to improve, or you want higher quality, or you want us to expand into new things, we would really appreciate if you would consider possibly becoming a patron and supporting the Art History Babes. Honestly, if all of our regular listeners, just became patrons at the $1 a month level, like we would be able to do so much more. Like we would just be able to do so much more. Real talk, honestly, like between the four of us, I think we work like 7 or 8 jobs, like not counting the podcast.
No, this is real.
That's just life, like not counting anything related to the podcast. So like we're
spread thin a lot of days.
Yeah, we're spread very thin, and this is like our passion. This is our passion project, and we care about what we're doing, and we are so grateful for the support we get, and we get so many great messages and just like love from you guys. It's like, keep it up, and we appreciate it so much. Like that stuff is really meaningful to us and really helps. But definitely, honestly, just $1 a month, those add up, and that makes it so much more possible for us to keep making this content, and maybe work less side jobs all the time and focus more on making good quality Art History Babes content for you guys, which is what we want to do. So please take that into consideration, and thank you for all of those who have already become patrons. We love you. We appreciate it. Not to mention, not only would you be doing us a huge solid, but like you get something for being a patron. If you become a patron at $1 a month, you get access to monthly bonus episodes. We've been doing these for a while now. I think there's somewhere around like 8 or 10 that are already posted.
Yeah.
And we do one every month. We do a bonus episode only for patrons, and you only have to pay $1 a month to get access to that stuff. We have other tiers where you can get other like prizes, basically like Art History Babes stickers and Art History Babes t-shirts and sponsorship credit and all kinds of fun stuff. But as low as $1 a month, access to all the fun stuff in our Patreon, all the VIP stuff, all the exclusive podcast content. So not only are you like helping make our dreams come true, but you are also getting something out of it. So please consider.
Thank you, just regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
It's about that time.
it's about that time. Yeah, I'm really excited about this episode.
I am too. We have so much to talk about.
Oh, man. You know what? We should just dive into it.
Vincent van Gogh. So he was born Vincent Willem van Gogh on March 30th, 1853 in the Netherlands. He is often considered a post-impressionist. So kind of your basic tenets of post-impressionism, the way it's defined. It came after Impressionism, post-impressionism.
Wow.
Yeah, and but it does respond to Impressionism. It's not as spontaneous as Impressionism. It is defined by bright colors and defined brush strokes and relatively clear outlines. Usually, like, it's a little less, like, dreamy.
Well, if we think about the root of just where Impressionism came from, it's really the French term for a sketch.
Mm-hmm.
So the post-Impressionists, as they were influenced by Impressionism, were taking those ideas further. So you have your artists that are really concerned with light. And then there's the artists that are very concerned with space. And so I feel like post-impressionism is really where a lot of these artists got to hone their niche.
Yeah, definitely. I think the defined element of post-impressionism is important. Like, I think imagery and it's just more defined than it was in impressionism a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like it moves away from leisure so much.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of just the subjects shift a little.
Definitely.
Just time.
Truly, I mean, if we think about, like, our boy Monet, we're talking a lot of fancy garden parties and, a lot of pretty churches and
So much leisure.
there was leisure, man. I'm like, did you ever work like that? I don't know.
Yeah, things get a little heavier with the post-impressionists.
Yeah.
Van Gogh, his decision to become an artist came rather late in life. I mean, all things considered. Age 27. So he was not one of those that was like bred to be an artist his whole life.
I think that's so cool.
I love it. I think it's great and important.
It's good for me.
There's still time for me.
There's still, I think, I love those like posts that like break down like all the famous people and like when
Right.
they became famous.
Like Oprah became a media tycoon at like 38 or
yeah,
something.
and like and how long, like how there's no template. Like so many people, like you can become famous at 18. You can reach your goals at 60. It doesn't matter. There
Yeah.
isn't like a set way to do it, and I think that's important to remember. And so yeah, he wasn't really like bred to be an artist. He decided to become one at the age of 27. First, he pursued careers as a teacher, a clergyman, and an art dealer. I do think it's important to kind of note, even though we're not going to talk about it too much, that Van Gogh was actually very religious. I feel like that's not like talked about a whole lot, but he was a religious dude.
Mm-hmm.
He died at the age of 37, so just 10 years after deciding to become an artist.
Dang.
Of a gunshot wound to the dorsal region. Some sources say the chest and some say the stomach. So in here somewhere. But in his life, in his short career, he made over 1,000 works. Like I think over 1,000 paintings and over 1,000 drawings. Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
it's a high number actually. Yeah, that's really impressive. What a tragedy that 37. That's all we got.
I know.
That's all we got.
I know, man. So we're gonna kind of start by kind of just diving into, I think, is probably the most like hot button thing about Van Gogh.
Yeah.
His mental health. Like everyone knows that Van Gogh had something, you know. Like,
right. Yeah, he was a little bit off kilter.
Yeah, because I think most people know the story about his the ear cutting incident.
Yeah.
We would call it.
There's like a Mexican pop band called La Oreja de Van Gogh. It's like the ear of Van Gogh.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
going all in.
Very rock and roll.
They're not that good.
So I think that just in itself tells you what our culture kind of thinks about Van Gogh. Like, oh, he was that famous artist that cut his ear off. You know, there's already an association with like his mental health state and kind of being this tortured soul for sure. On December 23rd, 1888, he chopped the lower part of his ear off.
Ow.
During an argument with our favorite person, Gogh.
Oh. Boo. Piss.
I'll put in a like boo track right there.
Make it like kids boo.
Yeah. Nat's actually gonna get into that later, and we can do some more Gauguin bashing. That's fine.
Love it.
But so he chops off the lower part of his ear during this argument, and then allegedly gave it to a prostitute. That's the story, anyways. Later, he paints self-portrait with a bandaged ear, which is a self-portrait of him with his ear bandaged.
Right.
After this incident.
After the incident.
You can make what you will out of that, but it's definitely violent. It's definitely like,
Yeah.
it's a dramatic story. It's straight drama,
I mean,
you know.
let's be real though. I could see myself getting so mad arguing with a Gauguin that I would cut my ear off too. Like, just, that guy just would make me that mad.
He's the worst.
Go listen to our Gauguin episode. We were like on the verge of cutting our ears off.
Cut my fucking ear off.
I'll do it. Oh my goodness. So in May 1889, Van Gogh commits himself to an asylum where he painted many of his most famous works, including Starry Night. And Starry Night is actually a view from his window
I love that.
when he was in the asylum. So do I.
What a beautiful view.
Right?
Yeah.
But I just think, that's very don't know, that just adds so much to the story and the life of that work.
And like the fact that that's arguably his most famous work, I think, is just very fitting in a way to the whole narrative of Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah, and it is like, I don't know, just thinking about it that way, like, because it is such a powerful work and it's so beautiful and like hopeful, but there is like a heaviness and a sadness to it. Like there's just,
I think it's whimsical.
Yeah,
you know?
it is. It's whimsical, but it's a dark
mystical.
whimsy. It's a dark whimsy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's, it's a great painting. Like, can't deny.
It's good.
It's good. Starry Night is art history babe approved.
Sticker that shit.
In quotes, is good.
Is good. That will be our art history babe book club sticker. Is
Oh,
good.
that's perfect. Just in quotes, is good.
So I think a very important quote by Vincent van Gogh on this topic, and very beautiful. I've put my heart and my soul into my work, and I've lost my mind in the process.
Wow. Did he really say that?
Yeah.
I love that quote.
Right?
I relate to that on many levels.
I think a lot of people can. I think there's such a interesting thing, like, just thing with trying to balance your heart, your soul, and your mind. You know what I mean? Like, that's such a precarious thing to do as a human and, like, as an artist. And it's a very difficult thing to balance all those. I think if one's outweighing the other, like...
And I think one always outweighs the other.
Right?
Can I just say really quick, this guy is so quotable. He just had such a way with words.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he hadn't have made it as an artist, then he should have made it as a writer, because his letters especially are just so like, well written. I wonder if everyone just wrote that way back then.
Yeah.
It just almost seems like it.
Sometimes I wonder that too, because I'm just like, wow, the way they talked was just like so poetic.
I know, we're over here like,
it's
good.
good.
That's good.
That's good. Dumb.
Damn, Vincent.
Dumb.
Oh
no.
It's too early for us to be getting this silly.
I know,
Let's
right?
keep going. Let's keep going.
We have so much to cover. Okay. So. Oh, it's another sticker. Dumb, Vincent. While he was in asylum, he actually tried to poison himself by ingesting paint and kerosene.
No.
Which sounds not like a fun time.
No, come on, bro.
Oh.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good. I heard once, and I do not know, like, this could definitely be one of those, like, artist myths, like, mythologies that surrounds an artist. So I do not have a actual source for this. This is very much just, I'm pulling this from my brain.
This is a heavy disclaimer, guys.
Yeah,
you still try and accuse us after this.
Yeah, right. So, like, I am not claiming 100% that this is true, but it might be. If you know either way, please let us know. I just remember reading once that the color of paint that he ingested was yellow because he, like, thought, like, yellow would, like, because he was so sad, he, like, thought yellow would, like, make him happy inside.
What?
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah. That's a story I heard once, but I don't remember if it was in an art history class or if it was on Tumblr. So, like, so it could be false, but he did ingest paint and kerosene. That's real.
That's real.
That's a real thing. I don't know if it was the yellow and it was that.
Color still to be confirmed.
Yeah, but
Okay.
anyways.
We're going to look into that one.
Yeah, and you guys can too.
Yeah, if you have any insider info on that, please let us know.
Yeah. So, as far as just diagnosable things, like what he was diagnosed with, both when he was alive and I think since, there have been so many studies on Van Gogh in, like, psychology journals, neuroscience journals. Like, he is a favorite case study, which is very interesting to me. So he suffered delusions and hallucinations. He had typical symptoms of depression where he would withdrawal, inability to kind of take care of himself in basic ways. And then he also was diagnosed with epilepsy. And then there have been diagnoses of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So we're dealing with a whole spectrum
They're just throwing stuff at them.
Yeah,
Like, they're like,
just,
we really don't know.
Yeah, just, which, like, really, like, honestly, who's to say how much of this he actually did have?
Right.
And it was at a, you know, it was in the 1800s. We're still just getting started in psychology, basically.
Right. I think it's safe to say that he did suffer from some manner of fits. Like, which is an old-timey way of saying, like, a seizure. And so I think that he was...
What's that old... This is off topic, but that meme that's, like, about being an old-timey doctor. It's like, oh, I wish I was an old-timey doctor. I'd be like, oh, you got ghosts in your blood. Why don't you do cocaine about it?
Yeah, I like that you would do cocaine about it. I wonder how many times doctors told Van Gogh to do cocaine about his epilepsy.
I forget what this just came up, but someone was talking about how they used to smoke cigarettes when women were pregnant to keep them from gaining too much weight.
Oh,
and this was like
Lord.
2 generations from our parents. So,
Right.
like, not that long ago.
Oh, man. Oh.
Old school medicine is crazy, and so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But for now, let's just say that he had an array of mental health problems, but in our 21st century lens, it's really hard to really say what he had.
Yeah, I think there was definitely some depression in there, but there was 100% delusions and hallucinations. So,
Right.
like, yeah, could be a lot of things.
Right.
I found this article that was very interesting. I was looking for something more from, like, a neuroscience or a psychology perspective, and I found this article, and we'll post it on our sources. I love it as a thought experiment, and I'm going to get into the details here, but I also want to kind of preface by saying that I don't think they don't really give evidence, and I think it's kind of an out there assertion, and I'm not saying that I agree with this, but it's very interesting. So, here we go. In this article called Neuroanatomical Interpretation of the Painting Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, they talk about his temporal lobe epilepsy, and that part I think is very telling, and they make a good case for the fact that that was probably like how his epilepsy operated, and they look at some of his artwork and just his story to suggest that like Starry Night is actually representative of temporal lobe epilepsy. That part is really interesting because apparently in temporal lobe epilepsy, like, you can have seizures that result in very dreamy states. That they think might have led to images like Starry Night.
So the style of Starry Night or the whole thing? Because I thought I've heard that you could actually map the sky in Starry Night to, like, the cosmos, where you would see it from that point, like, that it's actually very, like, cosmologically correct.
I think that it's something more along the lines of just how
like the way
the
in
style,
which he's painting it.
right, exactly. Like the auras and things.
Now this is where this academic article, like, this is an academic article, gets weird, but interesting. Basically what they suggest is that possibly Starry Night, they pull up the images of, like, Starry Night and then a brain mapping of the hippocampal region of your brain, and they visually, like, compare the two as being very similar, and then they suggest that he may have been tapping into some kind of, like, subconscious expression of where, like, the locus of his creativity was. Which the look on your face is exactly the look on my face when I read it.
I don't know, that's just so wild. Like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, like, that sounds so cool, but no, he was not painting his hippocampus. Like,
this is why I wanted to bring it up, though.
No.
Because I agree. I don't think he was painting his hippocampus. However,
I don't know where my hippocampus is. Like,
however, the reason I liked this article is, one, it was written by med students, and they're thinking very philosophically and very artistically.
I hope they're
Which-
microdosing acid
I-
as they're writing these articles.
Well, I just liked the crossover of art and science. I think that's very important, and I also think really good science can come from just really out there assertions. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so while I don't think that their overall assertion in this article was accurate or was proven in the article, because it wasn't. But I do think that it's an interesting jumping off point for thinking about things like, what role does the subconscious play in things like temporal lobe epilepsy? Can your subconscious have access to things like brain mapping? You're dealing.
Can you be more woke?
Yeah.
Because you have
Yeah.
a temporal lobe disorder.
Exactly. So that is the main reason why I wanted to bring that article up.
That
because
is so interesting.
I think it's a very interesting way to frame Van Gogh and to think about Van Gogh. I don't think he was, at least not knowingly, painting his hippocampus. But something to think about, Over the years, I've read a lot about Van Gogh. I've heard a lot about Van Gogh.
Yeah.
And I've never heard anything
No.
like that.
This
So
is by far the craziest.
Right? And so it made me have to think about Starry Night in a new way. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So that was just a fun thing I found.
I think that's really cool, and I don't mean to discredit it or discount it in any way because I'm laughing. It's just that it's so weird that I gotta laugh. But no, I think that is just the most interesting take on Starry Night that I think I've ever heard.
Yeah, right?
To be honest.
Right?
Yeah.
So it is. It's obviously we're going to be critical about it because that's what you do when you're being academic.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that there isn't some valuable, at least thought experiments, I think, going on there. You know what I mean?
No, totally.
Let us know. Do you think Starry Night is a painting of Van Gogh's hippocampus? Let us know.
I mean, I want it to be.
Yeah, right. However, I do like this idea that maybe his epileptic seizures created a dreamy state that he was able to paint maybe a little bit or access a little bit in his paintings. I think that is definitely something that you could see throughout a lot of his work, not just Starry Night, So I want to talk about the result of all of this Van Gogh mental health frenzy that we've kind of always been in since Van Gogh died. There is a huge tortured artist mythology surrounding him. Not that he wasn't tortured in some ways, and not that he didn't suffer, but we've created this bigger than life mythology. You know what I mean? This we've added meaning to it over the years. And honestly, as early as the 1930s, there were art historians and people that were kind of challenging this. Are we romanticizing things about Van Gogh? We need to think about this a little bit. And this really comes into play. If you haven't seen it already, everyone in the world needs to see Hannah Gadsby's Nanette on Netflix. It is just incredible. The most honest, raw stand-up comedy / it's stand-up, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's just...
She gets so vulnerable and talks about things that are uncomfortable, intense, but she does it in such a raw way that you're either laughing or crying when she's talking
for
about
real.
it. There's really not much in between.
I had so many emotions watching that special, and it's so good. And also, she is also an art historian. She went to undergrad for art history, and
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and a huge chunk of her stand-up is about art history, which is so exciting. She even makes a joke about it, bet you didn't think, there'd be an extended section on art history.
Yeah, but we're the 2% of the population that got super excited about that.
She addresses this idea of the tortured artist mythology and Vincent van Gogh specifically, because she's talking about her own struggles with depression. And how in a stand-up special she talked about medication for mental illness, and after the show someone came up to her and they're like, oh, you shouldn't medicate because it numbs you and then you can't do your art and blah 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 blah. And he said to her, Like, if Van Gogh had been medicated, we wouldn't have the sunflowers. And Hannah Gadsby just puts this person to shame in her stand-up because, if you didn't know, and I didn't fully know this either, like, these are details that I was unaware of, but are definitely factual. Throughout his career, like, Van Gogh, one, he painted a lot of his psychiatrists. Mm-hmm. So he was seeing psychiatrists, he was seeing mental health professionals all the time, like, and he painted a lot of them. And in 1890's Portrait of Dr. Gachet, which is a great painting, the doctor is holding a foxglove. And foxglove is the plant that was used to produce the medication that Van Gogh was taking for his epilepsy. If you take too much of, like, foxglove, the color yellow tends to become more intense. Like, you see the color yellow more intensely. So basically, what Hannah Gadsby is asserting, what I think you can kind of assert from that, is that we probably have the sunflowers because Van Gogh was medicating, and not the other way around.
Yeah.
This idea that the reason he was so brilliant was because he was so tortured. Like, there's, like, it is a part of him, and his, like, mental illness is a part of him, and, like, it is part of where his genius came from because it's part of who he was, but also, like, if we put the tortured artist stereotype on a pedestal, then it almost makes things like, you know, taking medication or seeking help to, it just adds to, I think, that idea that that's like some sort of weakness, or that you're going, like, you're being unfair to your art, or you're being less of a human in some way because you are trying to treat, like, what ails you, you know?
And mental health is so complicated and so intensely personal to every individual, and to think that your experience or what you know about mental health personally is going to translate to other people is just, it's not true. It's very rarely going to be the correct thing that someone needs, and so don't judge people. Like, some people don't do well on medication and don't need it, and have had negative experiences with it being forced on them when it's not the best thing for them, and vice versa. Some people really do need it to function and live a healthy, normal life. Like, don't impose judgments on people. Let them work that out with themselves and their support systems and their doctors. And the tortured artist does not need to be the goal. Like,
yeah, exactly. I think
let's look for, like, mentally sound artists who feel good and are happy.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can explore depths of emotion without always being unhappy.
Yeah, because I think that is just, it's created a lot of problems. Because, I mean, Van Gogh obviously is not the only example of this. We have an entire archetype of, like, the tortured artist that is just
Frida Kahlo.
Yeah, literature, music, like, they're everywhere. The idea of it being a goal, I think you, like, nailed it on the head there. Like, why can't we be mentally healthy artists if that's what we want to pursue, you know?
And if you're listening to this and this is especially striking a chord with you, and maybe this is something that you struggle with, and maybe you have your own, you know, your own ideas around this that are complicated, I suggest reading Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Corey did a lovely book review on it on our YouTube. You can go check that out. And she really gets into that whole concept and trying to really just break apart that myth and why we think that's true and why it's so false and damaging and can really ruin someone's creative pursuits.
Yeah. Like, you can be creative and healthy. Like, that's a good thing to strive for. Like, definitely check out Big Magic. Definitely check out Hannah Gadsby's Nanette if you have not. Vincent van Gogh had a lot of issues with his mental health, and, you know, in some ways I think that makes him very compelling and relatable, and that's good. But that also means he had a hard time, and, like, if we can create a generation of artists that can make beautiful things but can be happy more often, I think that's good too, you know?
I think we should take a break.
I think that's a good place to take a break. That was a lot of heavy stuff.
Ooh, we'll be right back, you guys.
Gogh and Theo, quick break, we'll get pie. Then it's nature, murder, suicide, loving murder, suicide, loving Vincent, and into Van Gogh Museum merch project. All right, let's go for it. We are back. We were talking about Van Gogh. Things got heavy there for a second. I don't know that they're going to get much lighter now, but...
No, we'll make it light. I mean, the nice part is we've been over this in the Gogh episode,
Yeah.
so I'm going to try and tell it a little differently. So we'll try and tell it a little lighter.
Okay.
Just to
Okay.
change
The
things up.
hate will still flow.
Oh, but that's not heavy. I mean, is that heavy?
Nah.
That feels light to me.
That's pretty fun. It's pretty fun.
Bashing Gogh has become kind of just like a fun activity for us.
Sport.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Van Gogh relationship. Nat, what you got?
All right. So the relationship that the infamous relationship, began in the fall of 1887 when Vincent and Theo went to a show in Paris and got to see some of Gauguin's work on display. They were very impressed, really liked it. Vincent saw Gauguin as an artist of the future, as a representation of like the modern era, and
Wow.
really kind of fitting into that world in a way
Damn.
that Van Gogh couldn't. So you can kind of get an idea of why Gauguin was really attractive to him.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it's because he was a sneaky little snake and
He was
fool everyone.
Slimy.
He was a dirty narcissist.
But to sweet, sincere Vincent, he just thought that he really had a lot of power in the modern world. So Gauguin, on the other hand, saw Vincent and Theo as his ticket into the art market and a connection, an invaluable connection. Theo was an art dealer. It made sense for Gauguin to kind of like latch on. And because Van Gogh was so into him and what he was doing, obviously that's a nice little ego boost, So they became friends. They wrote to each other often. Both kind of had the same ideas about artist colonies and trying to explore that and going, hey, Buzz.
I've just been
He's gonna
blessed.
come up with his behind him. And so they both wanted to start artist colonies. This was just kind of a thing around the late 1800s. And Vincent actually does move to Arles to begin the Studio of the South. And he convinces Gauguin, after much pleading, to come stay with him after Theo agrees to fund it. So Gauguin, on Theo's dime, moves to Arles in with Van Gogh into the Yellow House.
The Yellow House.
The Yellow House. And there's paintings of it. We'll put one up in our show notes. And it does not take long for things to go astray. Poor Vinny thinks his best bud's coming to live with him. It's going to be great. Things get south real fast. So in the months leading up to Gauguin's arrival, they wrote letters to each other frequently, kind of discussing and comparing their creative strategies, and they were both painting a lot. So they were also exchanging paintings, which was common practice as well. They both began to experiment with some similar things, like compositional techniques that they derived from Japanese woodblocks, which we talk about in our baby episode about they're experimenting with similar styles, similar colors or symbolic language of color, and natural representation, which Jen is going to get into a little later. So they did have a lot of commonalities in their art-making process at this time. However, Gauguin only stayed in Arles for 2 months, and they were often fighting, most famously, the ear incident, where Van Gogh ends up severing off the lower half of his left ear with a razor after an argument with Gauguin. Yeah, we talked about this in the Gauguin episode, but not much is known, which is why it's so fascinating to people, because there are a lot of theories.
Yeah, it is a big mystery.
It is.
Because we know the prevailing stories that they got into an argument, and in a fit of passion, Van Gogh slices off the lower part of his earlobe with a razor. However, there's also a interesting theory that perhaps it was a wound inflicted by a sword-wielding Gauguin.
Perhaps.
Who is to say?
And that Van Gogh didn't want to get his friend in trouble.
Yeah.
So he took the hit.
Ah, I feel like that's true. I don't know.
I don't know. They're both interesting stories. I don't know.
I wasn't there.
Can't
Can't say.
If you want to hear a much more heated conversation about this, go to our Fuck Again episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to go to that episode after listening to this
Yeah.
episode regardless, because it's just a solid episode.
It's
so.
really a great episode, though. Like, we're proud of it.
That's a good one.
And you need to know.
And
Everyone
we
needs
went
to know
off.
Mm-hmm.
what a dog he is.
We went off.
For real. Is that what you have for Gauguin? Is there more on Gauguin?
I think that's all the time we're going to give him on this episode.
I think that's good.
That's enough.
This is not his episode.
I want to give him. I want to
give him a negative episode.
I kind of. I'm like to the point where I'm like, he doesn't deserve any more of my attention. Like, I'm just done giving him my attention.
I want to block him.
Yeah,
You
can
know
I
what I
block Gauguin? Moving on
Thank you. Yes.
to a healthier, loving relationship. The relationship that Van Gogh had with his brother Theo.
This is just a beautiful. This is brotherly love.
Yeah, it really
in
is.
the most quintessential sort of like example. I think of that Forrest Gump quote. Must be hard being brothers. I wouldn't know.
That might be the only time anyone has ever quoted that.
I am so glad you just quoted Forrest Gump. And yeah, a very niche line.
Very well, might I add.
That was great. That was great.
Man, that was my moment.
That was...
Theo Van Gogh. Theo was Vincent's younger brother. And their relationship is just, like, so beautifully documented for us as art historians in the 21st century because we have access to hundreds of letters between brother and brother during the course of their lifetime.
Did any of them start, hey, brother?
No, I don't know, but there's, I really liked this particular quote in one of the letters. It was to Theo from Vincent on July 22nd, 1883. I don't really have any friends except for you. And when I'm ill, you are always in my thoughts. Oh, God.
That's really sad.
I know.
I thought I was going to be happier than
No,
that.
he just loves his brother so much, and they were really best friends. So Vincent and Theo, they both began their careers at the international art firm called UP&C. And so they both also attended The Hague. The Hague. In 1869 is when Vincent went on into The Hague, and Theo went on in 1873. So this is like an art school. Mm-hmm. So Theo went on to have a successful career, actually, as an art trader. But Vincent was dismissed in 1876, and he was forced to look for new work. And he struggled. He tried to pave a career as a minister of the church, and that didn't quite work out. But upon Theo's advice, he decided to pursue painting. So Van Gogh's decision to become a painter at 27 was really influenced by his brother, who believed that he had the necessary talent to, make that happen. And also, at this point in time, his brother is making a successful career as an art trader and buyer, and so it worked out, sort of. Vincent decides to move to Paris to live with Theo, And there, he would really mature as an artist and began to evolve and began to see what was going on in such places as like the Salon des Indépendants, which was like the sort of reaction to the academic salon. Together, Vincent and his brother also collected Japanese prints. As we mentioned in our color theory episode, I believe it was it color theory? We discussed Japanese in an episode.
We have in a few episodes.
Yeah, and so Japanese prints have a huge influence on Vincent van Gogh, and definitely this was something that was facilitated by his ability to collect these works with his brother. He and his brother have this sort of symbiotic relationship where his brother Theo is allowing Vincent to pursue his career of painting. At the same time, Vincent's artistic output is also sort of influencing his brother's direction in art and where he is buying art or displaying art, etc. So they're really feeding off each other, but this relationship in many ways was a lot of Vincent relying on his brother Theo in a large way. Because, for reasons we mentioned before, Vincent was kind of just not so well off with his mental health. His famous breakdown in Arles, I believe it was, when he had to be put away, or he put himself away, actually, in a mental institution when he painted Starry Night. So all of these moments, if it hadn't have been for having the support of his brother Theo, Vincent would not have been able to continue to paint. Theo was, in so many ways, his brother, his confidant, his moral support, his financier. Is that a word?
Sounded right.
I liked it. Patron, yeah. And his brother tirelessly tried to sell his work, and I think he only sold one painting before the death of Vincent.
I've heard from different sources that Van Gogh actually sold more than one painting in his lifetime, that he was actually a little more well known than we typically talk about, but it wasn't a lot. That's for sure. It was not a lot.
And
especially compared to the scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he wasn't selling work very often, and there are multiple letters to his brother that are evidence that Vincent really relied on his brother to send him paints and to send him money. I read a few letters to Theo where Vincent's like, "You need to send me the paints, for God's sakes. The orchards are blooming now. Like, this is...
I need the paints!
Like, there is no time." And so it's
I
very...
love that so much.
That was a real letter that I read that was just like, the time is now.
You
like,
don't understand. They're blooming right now, though.
I am watching them.
I love that.
You know, their relationship was very close. Theo and his wife, Jo, had a baby son in 1890, and they named him after his uncle Vincent.
Aww, that's nice.
And Vincent was so touched by this and loved his baby nephew so much that he painted Almond Blossom in 1890, which is just a beautiful painting. We saw it when we went to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam.
It's also on my glasses case.
It is.
I have an Almond Blossom
which you
glasses
got
case.
from the Van Gogh Museum.
I did.
It's a beautiful work, and it really is sort of emblematic of this whole idea of new life. It's almond branches against this super, like, fluorescent turquoise blue sky, and the tree is just blooming with these white blossoms, and it's just super symbolic of new life, and it's a perfect sort of painting for a baby boy, and it's just really beautiful. Like, when we saw it in person, we were like, wow.
I've always loved that painting.
Beautiful.
It's been one of my favorites of his. I mean, I just love flowers. I love floral paintings, but like, it's expressive, but it's calming, and it's simple, but like
heavily symbolic in all these ways.
Yeah. It's a good painting.
It's beautiful. There's an anecdote in a letter from Jo to a friend, Jo being the wife of Theo, where she talks about when Vincent came to visit them at their home, Theo drew Vincent into baby Vincent's nursery, and they both watched the baby boy sleep, and they had tears in their eyes as they observed this new life.
Aww.
And so these brothers had a moment where they were observing the new baby boy, and I was like, what?
That's very nice. That's a nice thing.
It is a nice thing. 1890, so Theo began to express his financial difficulties in trying to be an art trader and in trying to sell his brother's work. It wasn't really working out, and he desired to establish an art firm. Vincent became quite depressed because he started to really think about this overbearing relationship that he had with his brother and saw himself as a burden to his brother and his wife and the new baby, and really couldn't shake this feeling of living at the expense of his brother, and expressed this in letters to him and to Theo's wife. So a few weeks actually after Theo and his wife and their new baby paid Vincent a visit in July 1890 was when Vincent shot himself in the chest in a field, and he died 2 days later. Theo naturally was by his side and was there for his brother in his last moments. And about 6 months later, Theo's health really deteriorated sharply. He was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, actually, in November of 1890, and he was diagnosed as suffering from a progressive and general paralysis. So an initial examination confirmed this, and his medical notes said that he presented all of the symptoms of dementia paralytica, a disease of the brain. And Theo van Gogh died on the 25th of January in 1891, 6 months after Vincent's death. The cause of death was listed as dementia paralytica caused by, in quotes, hereditary chronic disease, overwork, and sadness.
Aww.
Sadness. The brothers are buried together.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They are.
That's nice.
They're buried together.
That's so fitting.
Theo's wife saw to it that they were buried together.
I
Got
do
goosebumps.
too.
Yeah,
That's great.
She was a good wife, and she loved her brother-in-law, and she actually wrote him a lot of letters and called him my dear brother, and loved him very much. And independently of Theo, they had their own relationship and wrote to each other often. So she sounds like she was a great lady.
Sounds like a cool lady.
Understood their bond and saw to it that they were buried together. So that's so wild. They both died within a few months of each other, and they just had such a close relationship. And
it's tragic but beautiful, you know.
Yeah.
oh, let's take a short break.
We're gonna take a pie break.
Pie.
Oh, Jen doesn't know about pie.
Jen doesn't know about the pie.
We'll be right back.
Oh my god.
Hi! Look how pretty this pie is.
Wow. And
YouTube viewers. So Nat and I picked some blackberries today, and then Nat's mom made us pie out of fresh blackberries because she's an angel in heaven.
oh my god, it's so good.
He just like snuck in there. I have not had homemade pie in so long. That's good.
Nat, your mom is out of control.
Blackberry bushes are mean.
Yep. They gotta protect their bounty.
Girl. That's serious.
They really do. You're really good at it. You got scooped.
Did you get scooped, kitty?
He's a scooped boy. Beep-a-doop-a-da-ba. Beep-a-doop-a-da-ba.
So over it.
Love you.
Cheers myself.
One of the many perks of double fisting.
We've returned from our pie break.
It was really good.
It was amazing.
Wow.
Incredible.
We feel sorry for you because you didn't taste it.
Still picking it out of my teeth.
And now we're going to talk about nature. We're going to talk about Van Gogh and nature.
Yeah. So Vincent was a diligent student of nature. So
Aren't we all?
I thought I was saying something like really profound. Apparently not. No.
Nature's
So
most diligent student.
wow. I'm gonna leave. I'll see you guys later.
I must just have merch on the brain because I was like, that'd make a great t-shirt. Like, nature's most diligent student.
Oh my gosh, that was.
We have so
Jen.
many ideas. Dom, Vincent, that's my favorite one.
Dom, Vincent.
And it has to be the monk picture of him where he just looks all bald and serious. Damn, Vincent.
I love
Oh
it.
my god.
I love
Okay,
it.
so we know, just even as a Vincent van Gogh layman, you just have seen that he paints landscapes. What?
Hey, Vincent van Gogh, layman.
I'm so quotable.
You
Wow,
are.
wow.
The most quotable person
You
I know.
really are.
Truly.
Oh my god.
I'm really trying. I'm really trying to get through this. Vincent van Gogh was heavily influenced by the Barbizon School. So Barbizon is a region in France. This school was active around the years 1830 to 1870. And so these are the years of the Romantic movement. So right before Impressionism, right around the time like where we move away from realism. But the Barbizon School were a group of French artists that were all about realism. And in this movement was a heavy preoccupation with landscape. So we're familiar with Jean-Francois Millet. He did the, dang it, what's the name of the ladies?
Gleaners?
The Gleaners, yes, thank you. So he is one of the most famous examples of an artist from this school. And many of these artists were painting in a similar style. So not only was Van Gogh a student of just art in general that he was observing around this time, but also he was beginning to work around the time of the Impressionists. So the Impressionists also were a heavy influence on Vincent, and we can pretty much say with a level of confidence that the Impressionists were super preoccupied with landscape painting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our favorite guy to reference is Monet, and he liked to look at some land.
He liked a good piece of land.
So, you know, the Impressionists were very interested in views of nature because views of nature offered up a lot of opportunities to experiment with color and light. And that is really at the heart of Impressionism. Mm-hmm. And so Vincent took these elements and made them his own in his work. So as I said before, he was very much thoughtful and meticulous about what he chose to paint as far as nature and landscape goes. He also found solace and personal fulfillment in studying and enjoying the natural world. As we have mentioned before, Vincent van Gogh was a deeply religious man. Mm-hmm. And as a spiritual person, he found many moments to commune with his higher power while observing nature. And so we know that he was also from Holland, and from Holland went into France and spent a lot of time in the countryside. So we're talking like beautiful, beautiful landscapes. Like, I don't know how many of you guys have ever been in the south of France, but holy hell. Talk about some beautiful places.
Yeah, for real.
You know, and we're talking like pre-cosmopolitan sort of developed France, which even now it's still pretty natural and beautiful. They've managed to keep it kind of wild. Van Gogh wrote to his brother Theo in 1874 saying, "Always continue walking a lot and loving nature, for that's the real way to learn to understand art better and better. Painters understand nature and love it, and teach us to see." And I think that's a really great quote, just because all of his work, I think, really embodies that. In his landscapes, he conveyed a very specific light. So he was obsessed with having light from a particular moment of the day. And he chronicled in his letters to Theo just how much he was like dying to get that like specific light from this point of the day. And you really get that when you look at these works, especially some works that he does of like orchards, or just he's known for his cypresses. We see cypresses a lot in his works. And these are really instrumental kind of tools for how he chose to display his skill and also challenged himself to try to capture the most interesting, challenging light of the time of day. And not only was he interested in light, but he was interested in weather and temperature. So the sower is a classic example, which I believe we saw when we were at the Musée d'Orsay. Big yellow sun, and the guy kind of hunched over in the front. The sun is almost green with that like acid yellow. He was interested in species of trees, shrubs and birds, movements of wind, times of day. And one of his sisters recalled that even as a child, Van Gogh knew the Latin names of insects, rare flowers, and birds, and he preserved them in little boxes. There's one of my favorite paintings that he did was the Peacock Moth. Remember we saw that when we were at the Gogh Museum in Amsterdam? It's a big moth. They're big guys. And he painted a very beautiful just little guy.
Beautiful little big guy.
Yeah, a little big guy. He was actually quoted as saying that he was that he went too far with Starry Night. He liked to stay within the guise of reality, and he believed that with Starry Night he went too deep and it was too abstract for his taste.
Oh,
yeah,
he did go deep with that one.
It was deep.
Deep.
So he was heavily critical of Starry Night.
Interesting.
That's really interesting because as we were talking about it, I came across an article that was titled "Why Physicists Love Van Gogh," and it talked about how in Starry Night he's basically, and I skimmed, but
that's fine.
He's representing a phenomenon that physicists can't quite explain how it happens, but he's like visually representing it really well, apparently.
Interesting.
Whoa.
Not only does Starry Night represent a subconscious understanding of his own biology, apparently, it represents a subconscious understanding of physics.
It might just be the greatest painting of all time.
A lot of people want to say that.
Right?
Oh my goodness. I mean, he was critical of Starry Night, apparently. He thought that he went too abstract with that painting.
You have to think, too, for someone who's so preoccupied with light, painting a night scene would be particularly challenging.
And he didn't
and
just
a cityscape.
Well, and he do multiple Starry Nights. He also did, like, the cafe. Cafe Boulevard with the, He did a few night scenes, but in relation to his nature sort of views, he felt, least to say, a little bit insecure about how Starry Night turned out. Towards the end of his life, many of his works were sort of longer horizontal canvases of fields. And so one of his most famous, and many say it was his last painting, is Wheat Field with Crows. So we learned an interesting fact, actually, when we went to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. We found out that that is, in fact, not his last work.
Mm-hmm.
His last work, according to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, is called Tree Roots. It was painted in July of 1890, and it's a jumble of tree roots. It's pretty abstract. It's not as poignant as The Wheat Field of Crows. We would all like to believe that that was his last painting.
Well, I think the common also like idea mythology surrounding Wheat Field with Crows is everyone likes to point out like it's wheat field with crows. It's kind of dark. Like
It is dark.
Crows are dark. Like it's supposed to be representative of his depression and impending suicide and the fact that he was gonna die and a lot of people have read very deeply into this as being his last work, and it's not.
It's not. So we hate to burst your bubble if you're out there thinking that that was his last work, but it's not. But
bubble burst.
Don't get us wrong, though. Around this time, he was writing back to his brother and his sister-in-law, saying that this particular series of paintings of the wheat fields were meant to evoke a deep sadness and loneliness.
Yeah.
So he was definitely a sad man at this time. I would like to end just with this kind of plug for a documentary that blew my mind when I first saw it, and I've seen it like 3 times now, and I want to watch it again. It's a 1987 documentary titled Vincent, The Life and Death of Vincent van Gogh. And I'm going to just say that it's arguably one of the greatest Van Gogh documentaries. And here's why. The story is told through letters written to his brother Theo from 1872 until 1890. And they are eloquently read by the actor John Hurt. John Hurt, big theater guy. This documentary is so interesting to me because it really forgoes the conventional Van Gogh biographies, then he cut his ear off approach. His camera kind of takes you through places where Van Gogh walked while he lived. And so you see the countryside that he lived in, that he painted in real time, like how it looks now. It's really hard to find. So if you can find it somewhere online, watch it and just enjoy it. I found it on Amazon, like the DVD, for like $64. Don't spend $64. I was like thinking about it, but I was also like a bottle of wine deep, and I was like, I should get off Amazon right now. But if you find it somewhere, watch it. It's from 1987. It's really great, and I recommend it.
We're gonna talk about some of the mystery surrounding Van Gogh's suicide or murder. The story is commonly told that Van Gogh died from suicide, from shooting himself in the chest/stomach region. July 27th, 1890. He is shot in the dorsal region. He returns to the inn that he is staying at and told the innkeeper that he tried to kill himself. And 30 hours later, he died. So that is the common story. We all knew he was very depressed. He had depressive tendencies. He had tried to kill himself before. So that is the common narrative. However, in 2011, Gregory Whitesmith and Stephen Nephi wrote a book called Van Gogh, The Life. They kind of caused a big fuss because basically there was this suggestion buried way in the appendix of this book that he was actually murdered. And they have some good points. They basically suggest that this man, René Secretan, who was a teenager at the time that like lived in the same town that Van Gogh was in, he often like teased and like kind of tortured Van Gogh a little bit.
That bastard!
And he also owned this pistol that was believed to be the gun that shot Van Gogh. And there were some weird kind of exchanges that happened later on in René Secretan's life where like he didn't admit to killing Van Gogh, but just kind of some things about his story don't exactly line up. If you want to get all the details, obviously you can look into this book. Also, the Art Curious podcast does a whole episode just about this kind of dramatic suicide or murder and kind of hashing out all the details about it. It's their second episode, I think, so you can look that up, and we'll also link it in our sources if you want to get all the details on that situation. There has been, at least since 2011, speculation. Did he actually kill himself? Was he murdered? What exactly happened? Because it is kind of peculiar. Like, if you want to kill yourself, shooting yourself in the chest is not the smartest way to do it. There are some things about the story that don't quite line up. A lot of people think that if he was going to kill himself, he would have at least written a letter to Theo, like a suicide letter, because they were so close, and he did not do that. So there are some interesting kind of points made about maybe he didn't commit suicide, maybe he was actually killed, or maybe there was an accident or something along those lines. This also is kind of the basis to the amazing, beautiful film Loving Vincent, which we actually did a Patreon extra episode about. Nat and I watched it, and we gave like our kind of review, like first impressions, and talked about it a lot. So definitely head over to our Patreon and check that out if you want to hear more about it. But it's a fantastic film. It's currently on Hulu if you haven't seen it. First feature film that's like fully painted. Every still is a painted.
That's so wild to me.
I know, right?
Oh my
All made
God.
out of oil paintings. It's pretty incredible.
It's visually absolutely stunning, and it's done in the style of Van Gogh, and like the scenes are based on Van Gogh paintings, and it's just a visual treat. It really is. And then the story is fantastic because it's basically it takes place after Van Gogh's death, and kind of talking to different people and trying to hearing these different sides of the story, like people who think that he did kill himself, people who think that maybe he didn't, or people who think something's a little fishy. So it's a really interesting, I think, take on that whole mystery. Fantastic movie. Everyone, everywhere should watch it, for sure. So we went last June. We took a Euro trip. If you want the details of that, we have a whole episode about it.
Go listen to the full episode.
Woo!
That's a fun episode.
Woo!
We went some places and did some things.
We went hard.
We went hard in Europe right after grad school, but we did go to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam.
We did, and the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam was such a treat. I really loved it, but I was also kind of annoyed.
Yeah.
So the Van Gogh Museum is a very well-funded, you can tell, establishment.
Beautiful.
It is gorgeous. Lots of plate glass. It's got a great cafe.
The best museum cafe
Oh
I have
my
ever been in.
God.
Incredible.
So they had charcuterie.
Yeah.
Charcuterie.
Right?
They had a charcuterie plate. I was like,
I had a
what?
Van Gogh Heineken. It had like Van Gogh.
We had Van Gogh Heineken. There was like Prosecco and all kinds of fancy wines. I mean, it was quite the experience. What I didn't like was the fact that it was swarmed with tourists, and these people were taking full-on flash photos of the art.
Yeah, it was that people were being blatantly disrespectful to the docents whose job it was to stand there and say, please do not take photos.
Yeah.
And then people were being aggressive back. Like,
Yeah.
They
response.
were trying to fight the docents.
It
So
was
that-
a weird sense of entitlement.
That's the thing about, okay, so the Van Gogh Museum, you're not supposed to take photos in it. And the thing is,
Do not.
a lot of museums nowadays let you take photos, and that's great. And if you're in a museum and they're like, hey, you can take photos, take all the photos you want, that's great. But if you are in an institution and it says not to take photos, don't do it. Like,
And
it's
don't
not that
fight
big of a
people on
deal.
it.
Like, enjoy the experience. Don't take photos for the 5 seconds. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
You can find it on the internet.
Yeah.
Write down the
And
name.
believe me, I love a museum selfie as much as the next person. And what ended up happening, because it was super crowded, like probably our busiest museum experience while we were in Europe. It was super
There's one
crowded.
in the Louvre
Yeah, probably. Or at least there was so many people in a smaller space that it was just very, very intense.
It was more like I honestly think it was like the energy. It wasn't the amount of people, because there were more people in the Louvre. We were really crowded in the Louvre. It was hot, but people were more. There was more of an air of respect in the Louvre, and I don't know, maybe because it's the Louvre, but people just had this weird.
I mean, even in the Louvre, I just thought that even in the Louvre, it was a little bit much. The way that people were going about with their photos and whatnot. And I think it's because it's Europe and these are big museums and they bring people from all around the world, and maybe a lot of them are so preoccupied with wanting to get photos of their experience that they don't quite grasp the sort of notion that you're there to view the art. And really, how many of you are taking pictures of what you saw at a museum and going home and looking at those pictures and being like, yeah, I'm glad I took these pictures. Like, enjoy the art while you're looking at it, is my sort of point of view. At the same time, I've taken pictures of a piece of work that I really enjoyed. I just think that there was a certain air of entitled sort of behavior at the Van Gogh Museum. That being said, I don't want to make it seem like it wasn't an amazing museum. And the work displayed was beautiful. I'm so happy to have seen it. I think that the museum itself was laid out pretty well. I feel like they started out with sort of his early years, the work that he produced while he was, he did attend school for painting, so there was some work from when he was a student. There was like a whole like corner of a floor where it's like all of his work that was influenced by like Japanese prints, like very overt influence. So overall, I think that I can say that I really enjoyed the Van Gogh Museum. I just wish that there had been either stricter security where these, jokers taking pictures.
I didn't think it. See, so that's what I was gonna say is I didn't think the problem was the security, because what caused the problem was the fact that everyone was taking pictures, and then docents, people would have to stop them, and that caused backup and caused problems.
Okay.
So it was like, it wasn't the security's fault, because they were stopping them because that was the rules, but that's what caused, that's what made the experience uncomfortable. It was like, you're not supposed to take photos. People were doing it anyways. Every minute, someone was still taking a photo, and then someone had to stop and be like, no photos, and that created a bad experience. I don't care if people take photos.
That's true.
It was the problem. Like, you can take all the photos you want. The problem for me was it messed with the flow of the museum,
right?
Because people had to be stopped, and it just
the fact that it wasn't allowed and it was still happening.
That was the problem.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and gosh, how do you combat that?
Stricter need to be more respectful.
Yeah.
Be responsible for yourself. Be an adult.
No, I think that
it was adult people.
Yeah,
being,
I know,
like more immature than children.
Exactly. If you want to take a museum selfie, do it in a gallery that allows you to take photos. Not a hard thing to do. The Van Gogh Museum isn't one of them. Just go and enjoy the Van Gogh Museum. It's fine. That's fine. It's fine, guys. Or take a photo outside the museum. Be like, hey, I'm at the Van Gogh Museum. I think that.
Well, they had spots. They had designated photo spots. The museum, you could tell, is doing everything in their power to try and combat this without bending over. And it's like, people are just.
Yeah,
it's true.
I mean, people would lie. They would literally do it and then be like, oh, and the docent would be like, did you take a photo? And they'd be like, no. And it's like, no. What?
Just be respectful.
We saw you.
Just be respectful.
Just look at it, because you're right there. Like, you're there. Just look at it. Like, you have a brain that records memories. It's like your own built-in hard drive. It really works. Like, let it do its job. Like, actually remember stuff in real time. And don't rely on just having your phone out all the time. Experience life as it's happening to you, especially if you're in a museum.
Tell them, Jen.
And rant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, at the the end of the museum, we encountered a lovely gift shop.
Yeah, it was a dope gift shop.
We bought some stuff.
We did
But
buy some
a lot
stuff.
of stuff.
And I kind of wanted to talk briefly about something a little fun. Van Gogh and capitalism. And just the overabundance
Oh, man.
of Van Gogh products that you can find in the world. Because they are prevalent.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's fun. So
I'm wearing one right now.
Yeah, Corey's got
Yeah,
I have
a
that same shirt.
Me too.
Got Van Gogh t-shirt on. Skull by Vincent.
Love it.
That's one of the cooler paintings.
He's smoking a cigarette too. He's like, I'm dead. I don't
It's
care.
We
pretty dope.
talked earlier about how Vincent had to wait for his paints from Theo.
Aw.
And now he's got his own paint line.
Oh, is that his face?
That's his face on Van Gogh
Shut
paints.
up.
There's paint, cheese, which we ate this tonight.
Oh,
That cheese on our
what?
cheese board
Is
was
that
this.
what we ate?
Yeah, and we didn't buy it. It came in like a basket, like a food basket that someone gave us.
It was really good.
Yeah, it was very good. So, Master Series Dutch cheese.
Wow.
Aged Dutch cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then vodka. Came across this one on my coupon app.
Van Gogh vodka.
Look at
Van
that.
Gogh vodka.
It's a nice looking bottle.
I know, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
It's very modern.
You know, quick little aside. Van Gogh didn't drink vodka very much. He drank absinthe and occasionally turpentine.
Yeah, I don't think they care. Some more obscure objects.
Oh boy,
A baby carriage.
that's weird.
With
I don't-
almond blossoms.
Oh.
I mean,
okay.
the amount of products that you can find and you probably come across on a day-to-day basis with Van Gogh on it is insane. I mean, you could probably find Starry Night on anything.
Do you want to know what's really perverse?
Sure.
We're about to do limited edition Van Gogh merch
Oh
for
yeah.
our
Oh
podcast.
yeah, we're not above this.
Nope.
I don't think it's perverse at all. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think you can support what the art history babes are doing, and we can pay our rent. I don't think there's anything perverse about that.
You just assume that perverse is a bad
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite that I've come across so far was a Van Gogh ear eraser. We had it in our giveaway once.
That's cute.
That's cute.
Yeah.
That's fun.
He's
I think
so
there's
good.
one of those coffee mugs where like when it's a Van Gogh self portrait, and when you fill it with
I
like
have that.
something hot, his ear disappears.
I have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a Band-Aid is in its place.
There you go.
That's precious.
There you go. But yeah, so if you want to get some Vincent van Gogh merch, you should probably check out our store.
Yep,
Do
just for the month of
it.
September.
Month of-
Limited edition.
It's gonna be dope. Check it out. Support Nerd History Babe. But also, if you want to keep the good times rolling and get in on our art project.
Oh, yeah, you guys, we're doing an art project.
For this art project, your kind of art assignment is to create a expressionistic skyscape or starscape.
Stars.
Yeah. So I'll break that down a little bit. So obviously Vincent van Gogh's work, very emotional, very expressive. And then Starry Night is his most famous work. So what we want you guys to do is to take the idea of a like emotional, expressive starscape and create something. It does not need to resemble a Van Gogh in any way. It is a very wide open project, but like expressive, emotional starscape. That is your project. And then if you create something, please either email it to us at arthistorybabes.com or tag us on Instagram
Yeah.
at Art History Babes Podcast. And by that, I mean tag us in the photo. Don't
Yeah.
just tag us in the caption because things get lost that way.
Does that work if they have a private account?
Or DM us. Or
Yeah,
Yeah.
DM us.
You
If
know
you
how
have,
to
if you have a
Instagram.
private account, send it to
Okay,
us.
so you can DM us or tag us in the photo because if you just tag us in the caption, then we might not see it.
We won't.
We definitely will not.
No.
Or you can email it to us at arthistorybabes@gmail.com. We're going to kind of look at them, compile them. We'll share them on our social media and kind of make it a fun thing. We're also going to do the project ourselves. So we'd really like to see what you guys come up with. Expressive starscape, emotional starscape, and
And you can watch us at some point in the future, we're going to do our own expressive starscapes.
Yes, we're going to do a YouTube video, and you'll get to see all of that as well. So it should be a fun thing. It should be a fun time. If you want to do some art and think about Van Gogh and join in the fun, please do.
Think about him.
Think about him. Also, we'll be posting a article on our Patreon and have kind of a forum type discussion going on in our Patreon. So patreon.com/arthistorybabes. All right. This episode is, as expected, running quite long. We're going to do a quick listener mail. Before we do, does anyone have any last words on our boy Van Gogh?
No.
All words have been said.
We said a lot of words tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And
Some twice.
if the words weren't said tonight, they've been said in previous episodes.
Exactly. We talked about him quite a bit.
Our listener mail comes to us from Hannah. It's actually a response to our recent episode on Machu Picchu.
Nice.
Hey babes, just listened to your podcast about Machu Picchu, so I pulled up a paper I wrote on the topic for an undergraduate class in pre-Columbian art of South America. Here's what my research showed me in regards to the women's remains and the nunnery theory. So we mentioned in that episode that when Machu Picchu was first discovered by Hiram Bingham, there were lots of human remains, 80% of which were female. So, but we didn't really know why. So here is what Hannah's research has to say. Another interesting theory held by Bingham was that Machu Picchu was a cloister for a group of religious women named the Virgins of the Sun.
Dope.
He was led to believe this because George Eaton, the osteologist who accompanied him in the Yale Peruvian expedition, identified most of the skeletons found at Machu Picchu as belonging to women. This theory was supported by the secrecy and seclusion of the site. Many Spanish accounts reference the existence of such nunneries or
Aklahuasi?
Aklahuasi, House of the Chosen Women, where chosen women were raised in seclusion to become priestesses, sacrificial victims, or the wives of the Inca king. Further analysis of the skeletons found at Machu Picchu, done by John Verano, physical anthropologist at Tulane University, disproved Eaton and Bingham's theory that the site was inhabited by the Virgins of the Sun. Not only did he find that many of the remains that had been identified as female were actually male, but he also found the remains of children and the presence of syphilis in the skeletons. It looks like, according to the most updated research, the site was most likely just a summer home for Pachacuti and his royal household. Machu Picchu would have been inhabited by the ruler and his
Panaka
during the colder season between May and September, when Cusco, which is at a higher altitude, was uncomfortably cold, but the farmers, many of the royal courtiers and retainers, and specialized workers would have inhabited the site year-round. These later groups of inhabitants had the primary purpose of supporting the livelihood of the royal family during their visits, but also engaged in other creative activities, such as textile production, metallurgy, and stone carving during the warmer seasons when the royal family lived in Cusco. It was fun for me to reread some of my work from undergrad. Thanks for keeping my art history bug alive. Love you guys, Hannah. And then this was all stuff from her paper, and she actually included her bibliography.
Dope.
So this is like actual academic research.
Wow, Hannah, that is so awesome of you.
Yeah, it's
that's
really
very cool.
nice of you to pull that up for us because it does respond directly to some of the questions we asked in that episode. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you can go check it out. But that is very interesting and definitely, I think, answers.
Yeah, we were super curious about that, so
Yeah.
I love that she wrote in.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Great job including a full bibliography.
I know, right?
I feel like
that's,
every email should come with the full bibliography.
that's next level stuff right there, girl.
Very
Way to go.
good.
We did it. We talked about our boy Van Gogh in a lot of different ways. I think we went all over the place with him.
Hey, you know what's crazy?
Mhm.
We didn't cry.
We didn't cry.
Wow.
I'm not very intoxicated. So
No.
maybe
You know what? Also, I feel like we're not as stressed out.
That's true.
When we did color theory, we were like,
Yeah, if you want to hear us cry about Van Gogh, you can go check that episode out.
yeah, go check it out.
Please join in on our art project if that sounds like fun for you. We're looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Thank you so much for listening, for your support. All of you are amazing. Please follow us on all of the social media and write us an iTunes review if you have a second. That really helps a lot. Share us, like us, write us emails, all the stuff. We love it. We're just having a great time over here.
Make sure that you continue to have a good time.
Always have a good time.
Always having a good time. All right. Catch you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.